That was a very busy night for me. 5 murders within about 7 hours.
Hey, don't you run away. Please stay.
Hello, and welcome. I hope you're all having a wonderful day today. In tonight's video, I'm going to be doing another true crime in ASMR. So with that being said, let's begin with the video. Joe Metheny was born on March 2nd, 1953. He said he had been neglected as a child and that his father was an alcoholic who was killed in a car accident. When he was only 6 years old, his mother had neglected her 6 children while she worked double shifts outside the home. He also claimed that his parents often sent him to live with other families in foster-like arrangements. He claimed that his mother was dead. His mother said that they were somewhat poor and she had to work hard as a waitress, barmaid, and food truck driver, but she had provided the children with a normal family life and the children had never gone hungry or been put into homes of other families as he claimed. She said that Joe was an above-average student, always polite and not mean as a child. She said that he was smart and had a good childhood. If he was neglected, it was his own fault. It was a pretty good home. End quote. Joe joined the United States Army when he was 18. His mother said that he had served in Germany, although he claimed that he had served a tour in Vietnam and had become addicted to heroin and cocaine while stationed there. His mother said that she had no recollection of him serving in Vietnam and that circumstances of his service were reported as unverified in press reports. American involvement in Vietnam had ended by that time. Joe kept in contact with his mother while serving in the army, but she said he just kept drifting further and further away. I think the worst thing that ever happened to him was drugs. It's a sad story. End quote. Once Joe left the army, he didn't have any more contact with his family, so he ended up living in the streets for a while. He was ironically known as Tiny in the 1990s, as he was 6 feet, large frame, and overweight. He had been spending time in bars, living in bands of homeless men in makeshift camps in South Baltimore, and spending nearly all of his money on crack, cocaine, heroin, and liquor. However, he held a steady job as a forklift driver and was universally described as an intelligent, well-spoken, and very well-mannered. Joe met a woman, her name is unknown, but they fell in love, got married, and had a son. Unfortunately, they were both drug addicts, but since Joe had a job, he was able to get a trailer home. In July of 1994, Joe was working overtime that night, and when he came home, he'd opened the door and turned on the light and saw nothing was there. His wife had taken everything and including their 6-year-old son. So 6 months later, he finds out by his drug dealer that his wife had moved on the other side of town with someone else, and that she was working as a sex worker and spending all of the money on drugs. Their son had been taken away for child neglect and child abuse. Instead of getting the authorities involved, he decided to handle the situation himself, as he was still doing drugs himself and felt that he had no chance of getting his son because of that. He found out from someone that she was going to the bridge where most homeless lived and did drugs. When he arrived at the bridge, he started asking around if anyone had seen his ex-wife. Now it is known that Joe did have a temper, especially when he did heroin. And while he was looking for his ex-wife, he was on heroin. He approached 2 homeless men and had asked if anyone had seen his ex-wife. They both replied no, but the response made Joe very, very angry. He then killed them on the spot and chopped them up, leaving their bodies under the bridge where a mattress was at. That same night, he lured down a sex worker with drugs and asked if she had seen his ex-wife. She replied no. He then proceeded to beat her and rape her and then killed her. He put her in some bushes. He then lured another sex worker and did the same thing to her. As he was about to throw her in the bushes, he had seen a man who was fishing nearby and had convinced himself that that man had seen the whole scene. Joe said, "I grabbed a steel pipe that was lying by and ran down on him and laid his head wide open. So I put the 2 girls and him in the river and weighed them down with rocks. That was a very busy night for me. 5 murders within about 7 hours. He washed himself in the river and cleaned up the crime scene as much as he could, and then left. 2.5 weeks later, he was arrested and charged with the murders of the 2 men he chopped. He spent close to 18 months in Baltimore City Jail waiting to go to trial. The trial lasted 1 week, but was thrown out of the court because of lack of evidence. He was a free man again. He went back and talked to his old boss into giving his job back. He stayed at a trailer and had convinced his boss. He convinced his boss to let him stay at a trailer that was nearby his site so he could keep an eye on the place. His boss agreed and gave him the keys to the front gate and main building. The company was on a dead-end road and was very isolated, and he said it was perfect for what he wanted to do. He lured 2 more women up in his trailer and killed and butchered their bodies. He cut the meat up and put it in some Tupperware bowls, then put it in the freezer. He buried the remains in several shallow graves in a little woods behind the company. Over the next couple of weeks, on the weekends, he had opened up a little open pit beef stand. He said, "I had real roast beef and pork sandwiches, and why not? They were very good. The human body taste were very similar to pork. If you mix it in together, no one can tell the difference." Joe had killed a woman named Kimberly Lynn Spicer in mid-November 1996 by stabbing her with a knife. He kidnapped Rita Kemper on December 8th, 1996, and attempted to rape her. According to prosecutors, he shared drugs with Kemper in the trailer where he was living at the pallet factory site. She refused to have sex with him and ran out of the trailer, so he chased her, beat her, dragged her back into the trailer, and then pulled down her pants and attempted to rape her. Kemper said he had attempted to murder her, saying, "I'm going to kill you and bury you in the woods with the other girls." She escaped through a window of the trailer and fled to the police officers in the area. He said everything was going pretty good until he ran out of his special meat, so he lured another woman in the trailer and he got her in and started to rip her clothes off and knocking the hell out of her. She was screaming, but there was no one around to hear except me, Joe said, and I just kept on laughing at her. I turned around for a split second, and that was my mistake, for she ran out of the door before I could get to her. There was an 8-foot chain link fence with barbed wire on top of it around the front of the company. There was a stack of wooden pallets next to the fence, about 10 feet high. That bitch scaled those pallets like a monkey and jumped the fence and ran down to the main road where some guy in a pickup truck picked her up and took her to a nearby gas station where they called the cops. End quote. He said, "Well, I knew the cops were on their way, but I didn't run. I gathered up her clothing, grabbed the keys to the gate, and went out and opened it. Soon as I stepped out of the gate, a cop pulled up, and the cop jumped out and pulled his gun on me and told me to get on the ground. And that is where it all came to an end. They took me down and booked me. She told them that I said I was going to kill her like the rest," which was true. They had me sitting in a little room down a homicide drilling me and damn near kissing my ass, trying to find out what I had done. They pulled me out of a city jail every day for a month, taking me back and forth between the company and the bridge. I had them going crazy over the company digging up the remains of those 2 bitches there, 'cause I had the remains buried in 7 different holes. The only thing I felt bad about any of this, I didn't get to murder the 2 motherfuckers I was really after, and that's my ex-old lady and the bastard she got hooked up with." End quote. His attorney said that he was remorseful and that drugs and alcohol had changed his personality and made him violent. He was tried in 1997 in the Kemper case and given a sentence of 50 years for kidnapping and attempted sexual assault. He was acquitted of attempting to murder her. He was sentenced to the death in 1998 for the murder of Spicer. At his sentence hearing, he said that he committed murders because he enjoyed it. He got a rush out of it, got a high out of it, and had no real excuse why other than "I like to do it." In August 1998, he pled guilty to murdering and robbing Mancaser, and prosecutors saw the death penalty in that case as well. He received a sentence of life in prison in that case. A death sentence was overturned in 2000, and the sentence for the murder of Spicer was reduced to life without parole. Joe was found dead in his prison at the cell of Western Correctional Institution in Cooperland, Maryland on August 5th, 2017. At the age of 64, one of the last few things Joe had said. Well, that's my story. Horrible, but true. So the next time you're riding down the road and you happen to see an open pit beef stand that you've never seen before, make sure you think about this story before you take a bite of that sandwich. Sometimes you never know who you may be eating. He laughed. End quote. I hope you all have enjoyed tonight's video. I know it was a little bit upsetting and very gross, but thank you for joining me, and I will see you all very, 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 very soon. Good night, good night, good night, good night, good night, good night, good night.